So, the Rabbi wanted me to speak about a few topics. One of the questions is, which is very, very, very common, unfortunately, and the first question really is, if a person gets married legally and they live together, is that a marriage? Or someone gets married at a formal temple, is that a marriage? And third is what, it's very interesting, if you look at the Moshe Chuvas, the 50s and the late 60s and the 70s, the Fishal, they ask him that they live together, and they live together not to be married. Try it out. That's a generation, but in 10 years it was just wow. I didn't realize myself. You understand what happened? Like at the 50s, 60s, that I think in the end of the 60s, I see a Tshuva Moshe says, now the question is, let me explain to you, what is the question? What is the halachic question over here? Now the Moshe has a few Tshuvas, and I've been asked this question by Chabad Rabbanim, and the local Bezdin asked me this question once, that, you know, a lady who became from, and she got married, either, got married legally, or never was married but lived together, or they formed marriage. I had once where they had a formed marriage and the guy disappeared. He went to South America, got in a fight with his wife, went to South America, then years later he resurfaced. But he, went to Argentina and went. So the question is it called a marriage? Is she haguna? Let me begin with the first question in the sugya. There's a very famous sugya, like one of the that says, "Ein adam oisa beilusoi beilas zenus." A person does not want that his intimacy should be znus. How do you say znus in English? Promiscuous. So what the real meaning is that he wants, if he decides to be married to this lady, to this woman, he wants just to be. Wants to be real, doesn't want this to be one of these fly-by, whatever you call it, promiscuous. So, now there's a question. What happens if a guy is not religious? What happens if the guy's not religious? Not talking about religious, raised not from. Let's talk about a guy who's raised from, and he decides to cut corners. So there's a very famous story that the Rashba brings down. So the Rashba has a story like this. There was a guy who married a lady thinking that she's not a married lady. She lied to him. It turns out she lied. She was a married lady. And the husband gave her get. You understand what happened? Shimon was living with a lady, got married to her, really thought that she was an unmarried lady. And lo and behold, she's married, and her husband gave her a get. And he still stayed, what?
Not married, and she got a get.
Yeah, not married to the first one. She was married. She never got a get from the first one. She fooled her second guy, whatever, boyfriend. She did not get a get yet from Reuben. Shimon married her, and while they were married, there was no Google search once upon a time. It took a while, and the husband arrives, Reuben, and he gave her a get. Reuben gave her a get because he was the real husband. Now, Minat Torah is Usalabal Usalaboy. You know what that means? Since she was a married lady, even though he did not know about it, he lived with her, I say, you know what it means? Not intentionally, he had no idea. That's the story. But still, the Gemara says, since she was a married lady, he's not allowed to live with Shimon. But Shimon didn't ask questions and stayed with her. And then, I remember now if he disappeared or if the question was, that he never made a new Kiddushin. He stayed with her. So the Rashba was asked, I think what happened, they disappeared. I don't remember this. Second guy. She was a troubled lady. Baby, The Gemara says, the Gemara Darsans, the Gemara says, When it says, what is when it dashes the posik, a person divorces his wife, oiselish acha, and oy mesa. When it says, either you're going to hate her or you're going to die from it. The Torah tried to tell you, do not marry if the husband divorced her because she was promiscuous. First husband. Anyway, the story was she stayed with him, and now the question was he disappeared. Whatever the story was, is she an Eishes ish? Because what's the question? The Gemara says a frum person once he becomes to the realization that the kedusha is not a good kedusha, he's going to be einum oise belusa bilizanis and gumar bekudesh is bekadosh with the beer. How do you bekadosh with the beer? There was no, you don't bring to him. Everyone knows that they're living together, so you have in mind that the intimacy should be l'shem kedushin. A normal, healthy person wants to be done. So the Rashba says that even though this person knows that he's violating a law,
Still doesn't want to make it.
and it seems like that the Rabbanim didn't want to marry him off. They were Elach, you're not allowed to marry her. He stayed with her, and those days wasn't like, I had a case in my community, she was not allowed to marry him. They found the rabbi to marry him. For the right money, but the Rashba's times, they couldn't, and the Rashba held that Afa Piken, he's Gumar Kaddish Bia, and she becomes an Eishes. You hear?
That's the proof, that's the precedent.
That the Rashba held that even though he's a choita, he's living with a lady that he's not allowed to live. Not that he's living without a kedushin. I'm not talking about that. He's living with a lady because she's also to him. You understand why? Because she was a married lady when he lived with her, and is also to him. And the Rashba says, so like a guy's, we call him, doesn't want to follow the rules of the Torah. No, that part he doesn't want. But he's in love with her. I can't give her up. But the part that what's his name, that doesn't want to live promiscuous, that does. Interesting. So that's what the Rashba learns. Many Rishonim argue on the Rashba. Oh.
Where is it?
It's the B'Shesha brings it, I think it's Siman Zayin. I'll have to look it over. I think so.
So he wants to live with her, but he's sinning,
but he's Mekadisha with the Bia. Mekadisha with the Bia means, you can Mekadish a lady three things.
But even though she's after him.
Even though, that's the
issue that the marriage works.
I'll explain in a minute. Even though it's also to him, exactly, and he does not want to live a non-married, I don't know how to say it in English, just live-in boyfriend, girlfriend. He wants to make sure this is a marriage.
But I think you could argue that the Yitzhak wanted him to be married.
No, the Gemara is talking about without Yitzhak. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say. He says even though he's a chayta, but after
This
bekan,
is part of the lady, you understand?
he doesn't say that. He does not say
What's the
that.
state of the children?
The children are okay. They're not allowed to marry. The children are okay.
It's not like a Cohen.
It's not like a no. It's not okay.
A divorced woman, the kids are halal, but
They're not. The children are okay. So, anyways, coming back. So the Rashba held that you do say. There's a Rivash. The Rivash was a Rishon, Talmud of the Ram. I don't know if you heard the Rivash, is one of the big Rishonim. He talks about the Enusim. The Enusim is the people who had to run away. He lived in the times of the Spanish Inquisition, Marranos, and he says, since they don't keep the mitzvahs, so they got married. They were not allowed to get married with Chuppah Kedushin, the Marranos, and now some of them were able to escape. And he says, since they didn't keep many mitzvahs, we see the Mazalzal, even though they finally were able to come out, we don't say, since they're not religious, we don't say, they don't mind if it's no. They don't mind if it's no. They don't care about it.
That's the same thing as the Balashas and the Moranos, is that the same kind of?
We're talking about the Marranos. Marranos is, we're talking about focusing at that a guy, let's say today, a guy from Russia. So those were the Marranos. Kill him out, and he never got married, only civilly. Do we say that he knows that this is wrong. Said the Russians are worse. They mamish knew nothing. The Maranos knew, and they were anusim. Anusim means they were forced not to keep. And since they were forced, some stayed, and they knew it was wrong. They didn't go to the mikveh. So the Rabbi says, once a guy is a chayter, a sinner, we don't say Einu the Moisei Belusa Belizinis. We don't say that. So the Moshe has a long tshuva, and he shows that most poskim hold. We don't say Einu the Moisei. We don't say for a sinner Einu Moisei Belusa Belizinis. That means we don't say that he's mekadosher with the beer. Let me explain something. You can mekadosh a wife, a lady, the kesef, the shtar, the beer. Now, many people have a mistake. I mean, many people think that the marriage has all three. The ring is the kesef. They think that the ksuba. Yeah, mamish. Mamish. I once heard a rabbi and the ksuba is not a kedushin, nothing to do. It's a legal contract. It's a prenup. That's what a ksuba is. And the bia, no one makes a bia in the yichadron. So, but how could the person be kadosh bia? What it says, he tells two Adam outside, they're not allowed to see the bia. Tells them, I'm going to the room to make a bia, Shem kedushin. Now, the Gemara says another thing. If a person realized, the Gemara says like the person of the kadosh isha, and he lives with her. The Gemara says, Udam Yedeya, a person knows you cannot be Mekadosh less than a Shuva Prita, that his Kedushin was not a good Kedushin. So that's why then when he sleeps with his wife, he has in mind the Bia should be a Kedushin. Who are the Edom? The world who see them live like a husband and wife, they're the Edom. That's what the Gemara says. Anan Sahada. You know what Anan Sahada? The we who watch them live like a husband and wife on the one roof, so that we are Sahada, that we are the Edom, that he did. So if we jump ahead of everything, if a guy lives with a girl because they want to try it out, that the Moshe says for sure there's no question. It's not they didn't want to get married. You know what I mean? How you say in us Chassidim say he l'shem yichad, not for marriage. I mean, they said, I don't want to marriage. I'm going to try it out to see how we're going to coexist. Can we make it work? So that the Moshe says for sure, but he does say that Henkin seems to say in all cases you need, but he disagrees with this case.
You always need to get.
Oh, it seems for him that you always need to get. He has a big chiddush in the sugya, and Moshe disagrees with him very strongly, no matter what. And Moshe says this, he disagrees. But he's choshech.
Your partner a domestic partner. Yeah. They hold themselves out. You have a girlfriend. You should live with her. You live in the same apartment.
But,
and they'll introduce each other as husband and wife. This happens nowadays.
But you're anti-getting married.
They're not married. There's no kedushin. They just hold themselves out. We've been together for 10 years. Remember?
Yeah. And for sure they're married. No, you're going to that.
I mean, they don't want to get married, right? You're saying that that's the shtick.
Yes, they don't want to get married. They say we're not married, but
they're a long-term committed
relationship. They're a long-term
committed. So they don't. They again. But the way you. What was I saying? So what you're saying, I don't understand what you're saying. So they say, I don't want to be married.
Yeah.
I don't believe in the, how you say in English, the marriage institution of marriage.
Exactly.
So then again, he doesn't want to be married. So he's not going to Kaddish Hashem Kedushin. I don't want to be married.
Rabbi they're married.
Henkes are married. They're a big Kiddush.
So is the family, somebody can take pictures together with the tell the people that they're married. So sometimes there's family politics on this.
I was told, someone asked me that, people asked me this question. Someone asked me that his brother wants to come and he wants to bring the girlfriend for Pesach, last Pesach. I said to him, sorry, you can't do it for your children. I don't care, you have young children, the children will see that they're living together. Can't do it for the children. Yeah, but it's not going to help. It's not going to help teenage children. That's a terrible.
If they intend on getting married, let's say in 10 years, they want to save up enough money, in 10 years they can get married.
So then that's a question. That's a different. Then you could say they are committed. They don't have money. They need to make this fancy bash, and they're waiting for that. So that's different. That's all different.
Do you have to be worried how
Yeah, so the Moshe says that you should try, whenever they have such a situation, to get a get. If you can't, what? And even civil. He says, if you are a boy and a girl living together, in any situation of Henkin held, you should get a get.
Well, what's living together? They're mamish living, they have sexual
No,
relations?
no, they live on, no, you're right. If a guy just has a,
One night or no?
once the night stand he's not talking about, that's nus.
No, even a 2-3 year girlfriend. but-
Yeah, they live under one roof.
But they live in separate apartments.
That's something else. That's just not.
Let's say this.
No, this is very important what he just asked. Let me just explain. We're talking about, because we can't say an answer how they would go to get it, because, you know, he has his own apartment, and once in a while they get together. You know, I mean, I had someone once told me, from Brazil, told me that his sister, you know, lived with her boyfriend first, just for the weekend. They would get together, and when he got married, they still do it because she's a physicist and she doesn't want to be bothered. And the weekend they get together. And I was telling me she became from, but you know, that was the arrangement. But if a person lives, like he said, that just once in a while give together, that's not marriage. That's not what a family. Hank is talking, they're living under one roof, in one apartment, and the neighbors see, they're living like a husband and wife. Even though they know they're not husband and wife. But they're living, they do the shopping together, and
I'm trying to get the standard. The standard living together is a greater standard than having a relationship?
yes. That means that the one, just because they get together once in a while, or even, you know, they comes over the pub, eats up, and he's out of there afterwards, whatever they do, but they're not living together, husband and wife. But as they move in together, and people see them living a husband and wife, that is the question, do we say he's going to Kaddish? Now again, so if, you know, today many Americans, they try this, let them try it out. They don't want to get married, then for sure he has no intentions to get married. Unfortunately, you sometimes say this happens to even some of these very modern Orthodox or conservative, they mamish move in. They go to the mikveh too even. You know what I mean? They want to try it out, and we'll see it. So
They're not part of Islam, but if the couple can be having relations, I had this question, I remember when I was dealing with in yeshiva, I was drunk out there, one of these type of yeshivas, where there was a kid who was having relations, and we discussed with the rabbis, should he be pushing this girl to go to the mikveh?
Should be pushing him, should be pushing him not to have relations. What do you mean?
Get him out of
Hey,
the
he's doing his thing.
I mean, Alamaisa, we never encourage a person to do a lesson. If he does it, you know what I'm saying? We don't tell a person, you know what? Don't eat chalif, eat chazer. You know, whenever you take sex out of it, it always looks a little better. You don't be such a ganav. You know, I know you rob the bank with a gun. Don't rob the bank with a gun. Without a gun.
That is a big difference.
So you can't, right? You can't say this to a person. We can't tell a person, and people have asked me this. You know, Bono have asked me this question. This is a serious question what they're asking. I looked around all over. We can't tell a person, you're living with her, she's a niddah. Make that sin less. Make sure she goes to the mikveh. A guy does it, he does it. I don't want to say anything. But
if the unmarried couple keeps, if the unmarried couple keeps,
yeah, so there's a Issa Derabanan. They're living without a marriages, and Issa Derabanan is plaguish. That's for sure. But the question is, you're right. That's what I'm saying. It's 100% sure. A couple is living, and she goes to the mikveh, and you know. If he does it, okay, that's his cheshbon.
What about the other way around? If you have, let's say, people are not religious, right? They're living with each other. Do you push them to get married?
So I don't know.
I heard that Moshe holds that you shouldn't push them because
not.
they're not from. Then when they actually
Moshe held not to push them, right? Moshe held not to push them, and we see this a lot. That they get married, a religious marriage. Chabad Rabbi married them off, and then I had in my community, Mama, such a story. In my community, where she got married, she was totally fried with him, and then came to get. He didn't want to give a get for a few years. She became religious a few years, and why do I have to give a get? and you want to get, give me money. I mean,
No, when the rabbi marries them, the rabbi should feel responsible to make sure that they are true.
yeah, because they're not frum, what do we gain? Yeah.
Where they come from.
Right.
Like also making sure
But
that
there-
they go to mikvah. Are you
Yeah,
allowed
the
to?
Moshe says Mefurish, you're not allowed to be Misada Kedushin. Moshe says you're not allowed to be Misada Kedushin if the person's not going to go to mikvah. It doesn't help that night you go to the No. People have quoted to me, I looked at Moshe more than once, people have quoted this to me like this, what you're saying, that Moshe says, that the night of the thing, he says, no, if you know they're not going to keep the Haras on a shpocha, do not marry them off. He also said this. Even though they're living together, it's a chiddush. He doesn't explain himself why, but he says it clearly. Other people have told me, and just the night of the week, make sure. I mean, they're living together.
No? But there's like, I don't know what.
And I'm just saying, yeah, but that's a separate issue. The issue is, there's no practical question. You marry them all, but he was asking, and they're not religious, and then, 50% of marriages fail. Right? What is statistics in marriage? 50, so the chances is it's going to fail is 50%.
Why make that presumption? They're getting married now.
But 50% of marriages fail. You know that for a fact. So there's a 50% chance it's going to fail, and then she's not going to have a get. And if she stays not from, she's not going to have a get. And she's getting married to someone like Mamzeidim.
Yeah.
You understand? The chances of 50% is they're not going to. Going to fail, and you made a wedding, a kosher wedding, and now they're not going to get a get, and they have children. The children be mamzer.
In Australia, when they teach people to get married, one of the courses is about the importance of the get. You should hear it before they get married, and a good strong way that they have to get a get. Helps.
Like marriage registration or something?
Part of the chassan class is that you give the chassan college and not that film, which is extensive about the importance of the get.
Okay. All right. So let me go quickly back to the thing. So, then Moshe talks about a reformed marriage. See, once a person thinks that he was married, he doesn't. We don't say he makes the bila shem kedusha. He's married. So the problem with the reformed marriage, Moshe explains, the reformed marriage, don't you dare say I'm a kaddish you. No, I'm a kaddish you. Says, I'm buying you. Chulila. We shouldn't say it was a joke. But they look at it as degrading. We pronounce your husband and wife to exchange rings. I once had mamish at Shalom, and the lady was Mazana, and she was crying, begging her husband to take her back, but her husband was becoming from. And a Chabad Rabbi brought them to me and wanted to know. They both wanted to know if they could live together. He wanted her back very badly, and I went through a rough time. They were coming from. What did you say? So they brought me the video of the way I ran. There was first of all, there was no Adam. Absolutely no Adam. And it's clearly, there's no Red Mikadeshusly. He makes a whole drasha, it's like a galach. He was mamish like a galach. And he says like a whole pisman, and he reads that, and you should be man and wife and the whole thing, and then, okay, and now they can exchange the rings, and now we pronounce you husband and wife. And around the chas and kala was the family surrounded. No Adam. He didn't say Adam. There was no one. So the Moshe does say like, if in case he did give her a ring, and there were kosher people in the audience, then it's even though he didn't see, then some sort says the kedushin is a kedushin. But by reform, it's clear that they don't make a kedushin. They hold it's a bezoin. You know how you say bezoin? Disgrace. They hold that that's not a kedushin. Okay, so they're not married.
But if you exchange rings,
You're not married. You're not I'm buying you, you're buying me. We pronounced you husband and wife. It's not a kinyan. There's no kinyan. It's not. But a kedushin is a kinyan. No. Let me explain something. You know how kedushin works? The Gemara says a kedushin is a kinyan. You bought her. It's not. You didn't buy her. But the Torah said that's how a kedushin works. You give a kedushin, and you acquire her. You hire it kedushisly. It's a kinyan. The Gemara learns all kinyan. If you learn Masechtas kedushin, all kinyan is discussed. Can you make a kedushin with the chalipin? Can you make a kedushin with the siddur? Can you make a kedushin? All different questions, because a kedushin, It's not yours. Your wife is not yours. But the Torah says, how does she become your wife? With kiyikach yishishu, like buying her, so to say. It's a kinyan. They hold that's not right, that we pronounce your husband and wife. Now there's the conservative weddings, sometimes you do make a condition. They do. Some of them depends on the rabbi, they say, right, kadeshiously, they do some, I was told. Oh, but the problem is, the Moshe says in the Tshuva, the Tzveif has a million chiddush. And I was extremely annoyed at a rabbi in this community, and I was going to publicly put him into Cheder Mamash. What happened was, there's a Yuchsin Sefer. The story was, the Masadi Kedushin did not realize, in Europe, it worked differently. Yekes still do it today. In Europe was, the Masadi Kedushin brought his two Edom, not you, Mechabed. Because, I don't know who you guys are. They had a steady to Edom. That means the same. Somebody could assign whoever you want. The Kedushin, to make sure the Kedushin, the Rav of the city had two designated people that he knew were Yerushalayim. And he came to the wedding, he forgot, he didn't realize that they were first cousins. The chassan with the Ed or the Kala, I forgot which one. Supposed to lay them, and he brought them as Edom. So there's a whole tshuva. Now, the Chasam Sofer, listen to the Chasam Sofer's tshuva. This is a frightening tshuva. So the Shoyel asked the Chasam Sofer, it's after the Sheva Bruchas, we realize that the Kedushin and Kedushin, should we make a Kedushin in the Chumrah? What do you lose? Kedushin in the Chumrah. So he says, don't, you shouldn't make it. And then he says, you want, but he says, make Kedushin. You know why Kedushin is Chal? There were other kosher Edom at the wedding. They didn't even see it. It wasn't, in Hungary, I went to Hungary with my mother, the Zangazint, and it wasn't on the stage. He was in the Shilhoif, that means the Chotzer, the yard, Shul yard, it was the ground floor. You couldn't see, most people didn't watch it, just heard, condition. They didn't see it, it wasn't like on stage and people see. Even now it's difficult to see very often. But they know there was a Kedushin, he brings a Raya from Aran, the Kedushin is Chal. And Moshe agrees to the Chasam Sofer. So you understand, so if there's two from people there, Mamish there, he holds not to remake the, you don't even, but he says you can make the Kedushin.
The guy doesn't understand what he's saying.
It doesn't make a difference, he doesn't have to understand. He knows this is how I acquire a wife. No.
He's trusting the rabbi.
He's trusting the rabbi.
You say these are the two Edom, and you say chutz from everybody else.
Well, that's you don't have to.
If you did do it, then
But
so let's say today's day and age, you have a chutz.
if you say chutz,
you realize that one day was related.
and you depends what the Masad Kedushin. He says he designated, no one else should be an end, then the Kedushin is surely not chal.
And you have to do it again.
You have to go there, but those days they didn't do it. These are the Edom. The Iked with the Miyachad Edom is a big mistake. There's a rabbi who's also come to a cheder and act like the Seder Shulchan correct, you know what they're talking about. The reason why Miyachad Edom, Toys Estakasha, we have a cloud, Nimtza Echem and Kudav Pusel, the Edom is Vosel. You know what that means? If Ruvain killed Shimon, Chaman Natzlan, and a Korav saw it, a relative of Reuven saw it, his brother saw it, the whole thing is possible. The whole sugya, difficult sugya. So the Toys Estakasha at the wedding. Having the father, mother said, everyone sees the wedding. Why don't you say? So Toys is one that you see the Baal Toys are not choshit to Miyachad Edom. So Toys has many treats. Maybe it's dafka not an Edom Zakiyam, a Chalois is different. But the Ritva does say you for that is Shemiyachad. The Yichad Edom was that not the relatives should be Edom. You understand? Just not the relatives. Today, they say a new fancy version. Everyone is an exclusion. How did they say? Exclusion of others. That's not what it really went. The Ikka was the relatives should not be. Not exclusion of all others. Nice? So if you do exclusion of all others, you're right. If it turns out then the Kedusha is not a Kedusha.
what's the purpose of that language?
Why? I have no idea.
Came from this place. Because the relatives cannot be part of the witness.
Yeah, but why did they say exclusion of all others? That doesn't make sense. It's a lawyer's language. It's legal, but it's a vratzis.
I'm saying it's legal talk. So we interpreted it
That's what again. Yeah, probably a rabbi was a lawyer and doesn't know what he's talking about. When the catches on, and
They also have to cover the shame neighbors, right? If an aid is there, but he's not.
doesn't have to have one shemedes. Yosef says clearly you don't need the shemedes. And many Rishonim say that. Anyway, so coming back, so you have a conservative weddings, even though the Edom are not good, but if the kosher Edom there, then it becomes a someone once asked me, the Chabad shliach told me he didn't Masad the Kedushin, but the conservative rabbi, he was there and there was another from person there. I said the Kedushin is a real, according to the Kedushin is a real Kedushin.
Provided that they with the proper Lashonis.
Yeah, they don't have these fancy conservative rabbis, these fancy exclusions.
They did it kosher.
Yeah, they said right B'Kadesh's day. Yeah, this is
I
considered.
went to a wedding once, it was a reform wedding, the rabbi was gay, and it was me and another firm person, and he did it, from my appearances, it was real ksuba, and they used the right terminology.
That doesn't matter, because they married them, not just.
No, my friend was getting married, the rabbi was.
And he said the right B'Kadesh's name? Oh wow. So every reform, someone told me, some reformer rabbis stuck it do it, but somehow very makbid. The one that I listened to the video is clearly, he doesn't say that in Kadeshes, he does, there's no Adam and there's no nothing, and he says, now we're going to exchange rings, you put on his ring, and now we pronounce your husband and wife.
This one, there was no exchange, I was surprised, there was no exchange of rings, he gave a ring, he said, all right, there's me and another firm person who signed ksuba.
Maybe he wasn't conservative, was a reformer?
No, he's a big reform rabbi in the valley, a big reform show, he's a rabbi.
He's a redhead?
12 years ago, I don't know.
So he used to come to a shiur I used to give, and he used to call me till I realized he's a reform rabbi. I used to give a shiur Halacha in the valley, and this reform rabbi used to come. He used to ask me, I didn't know he was a reform rabbi, but I just knew that he wore a ponytail and he had a very good head. And then someone told me he's a reform rabbi. So I asked him, why are you coming to this? He said, I like Torah. And I heard he sometimes does the right things. I was told. But most, I don't know, I have no idea about that. The way
And then she gives him a ring and she says, I need a ring to the ring. Is it only he?
So the Moshe has a tshuva about it. I don't remember now. He talks. He's father. He says that it should be good. He says he shouldn't do it, but if he said that Rebbe Kadeshusly, he has a whole tshuva back and forth about this. Some do it this way. He says that Rebbe Kadeshusly, and then she says Ani ledoidi v'doidi li. She puts a ring on his finger.
But she doesn't say that in the pasuk, she just gives him the.
Right. So Moshe is not to do it under the chuppah. So the Modern Orthodox in the Yichud room, he puts on a ring. She puts a ring onto him.
But we hear after they break the cup, I saw pulling upon him. After the ceremony, it doesn't matter.
The Moshe says not to do it in the ceremony. He says if she wants to give him a ring, not to do it. But this what he says, and they who said? They say Anila doidi v'doidi. She says, and he says you shouldn't do it. Should not do it. But he holds. I almost show you he has a long tshuva. He says the kedushin is a kedushin because he said that any kedesh is late. Just because she thinks that I have to do it back doesn't.
She's making it false in her mind.
Right.
The
Something
main
like
thing
that.
is to act.
Right.
That's it.
So again, if it's a conservative wedding, or like he said, even reform, he said the right words, the kedushin. If there were kosher Edom, the kedushin is kedushin. Even though he did Yumanad Edom, if you were there and you saw. But if it's one of the, so what happens if someone gets married civilly and thinks that we're really married? Many of the Tinnik Shanishba I asked told me that they really thought they were married. So they never have a mind. I asked the guy who became from, and I remade the marriage. I said, "What do you think?" I thought we were married. What difference does it make? We're married. The difference, becoming from, what difference does it make? If the justice of the peace made it, or they thought they were married. So you can't say that he has a mind. Pasha has back and forth about this too, but he does say that if you could get a get, you should get a get.
I actually asked this issue. I've been trying to figure out Rabbi Posner in Chicago, in Skokie, in 15 miles per hour. He wrote to me that there are abundant from all the issues that I've been present in, from all the sessions I've been present. It's not a proper session to make sure that Jews marry each other That's not proper to take in custody as maybe they didn't force, marry them properly.
Why? Why is that?
What are you saying? I don't understand.
He's saying that you should push a non-frum couple to get married, even if.
But why? I don't understand. What's the important to push? The worst thing is over Issa Derabanan. So I never understood.
I can have a kosher wedding if they're not.
In a healthy community, people come to you, when they, by the time they get married, they're ready, you make them kosher, you give them keep Shabbos, it's another step in their life. The Kavanas that make them pro.
He said that you don't take the cheshbon, what might happen down the road. You get them married halachically, and he says, and he just wrote, there's no citation, he goes, I believe that there are rush from their efforts to that effect as well.
The goal is to get people pro.
Yeah, but
I heard from Rabbi Shochet, I mean, he has a little different. He says if they come to you, that's one story. But if they're gonna go to any way to form, don't help them out or anything. But it's a little different if they're coming to you, because then their kavanah is a little different.
I'm just explaining why I don't. If a guy, if you read, you know the guy's becoming from. He wants to become from. He's getting from. Then he keeps kosher. Yeah, if a guy sees he's on the way, but I'm talking about. I know people, klal didn't want to be from, and but they want they want to get married religious and buried religious. They come to the Chevre Kedisha. They want to be married. And they want to die. It's a very funny story. The Chavik Dish tell me all the time. All of a sudden, the children are frashe befrei. No, but my father wants to have an Orthodox burial.
In Israel, the rabbinate controls weddings, burials, all of these things, and there are a tremendous number of people who are.
They have to get divorced.
Through them.
Through them. If you want to remarry, they have it under control. You know what I'm saying? If you want to remarry, I know there was a lady over here who needed a get from Rabbi Ganswai many years ago, and he wrote in the get, Usala Baal, Usala Boyo. And he wrote it into the head, and she was screaming, and I ran into the room, we were turning it on. And I was trying to listen. What she's screaming? She said because she goes back there to Saul, they're not going to marry her because she wanted to marry this new guy. That it still has the rabbinate has a point.
I know what's happening. The Rabbanim that are very strong pushing that people should. It's going to get better.
All right.
People need to be aware of it.
So another look which I discussed that often this happens so often. If a person gets a get, he has to wait 91 days before he could get married. She needs 91 days, and there's no heter. Twice it happened that people didn't think of the rabbi, did not think it through, and one time there was no way we had to push off the wedding. One time, I remember finding a kula about rabbi. The whole family was here already. I have to look it up, but I wrote down. I have to look at based on Moshe's tshuva. She was an older lady, but the Shiurim says even an older lady. A whole cheshbon. I forgot the cheshbon was. It was a disaster. The rabbi forgot to check that she just got a get, and the whole family came from New York already. Sunday was the marriage, and Thursday night he reminds himself. Someone tells him, "That wasn't he." He tells him himself, like one of the young people, and then tells him, "Rabbi, she got the get just very recently. How could you already?" It's very important. You cannot get married till you have to 91 days after the get. It doesn't make a difference. Even when he's in jail. The sinus get. Even he's in jail. Because Chazal said, you should know whose child it is. But they made it look plague. It's his child or her child. And it doesn't help to take a test a pregnancy test.
There's so many layers that if you know that they're not holding themselves out to you man and wife for a long period of time, and she doesn't get pregnant within the first 3 months.
Yeah, I'm saying it doesn't make a difference.
Once they make the call,
What happens is in jail. He's sick in bed with a coma.
Okay, so let's say Rabbi messes up and they do get married.
But you have to, the Mechaber says, you have some shit to say you have to get divorced.
Well,
So the nice
but you can wait 90 days.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you got married, you have to get it. If you got engaged, you should run away.
Really?
But I'm saying because Chazal were very machmir because we want to make sure whose child this child is.
Same for Almana?
Same Almana. Almana has to wait 91 days. And even if he was in jail, and even if she's 90 years old, it doesn't make a difference. Chazal made her play.
After Shiva, he said, find me a wife.
Man.
Man doesn't have to wait. A woman
Man.
has to wait. Sorry.
Satan never said after Shiva.
An almana.
There's a Talmud Bavli that way. If Yosi,
That's what he's talking about.
there's a Gemara. The Gemara says if Yosi had Kohen came home from the Beis Olam and he told his sister-in-law, and he had a bunch of small children, and he told his sister-in-law, and I forget the word Lashon he used. He says, "Can you prepare the house or something like that?" And she understood he wants to marry her. And what explains we can't get married till after Shloshim. And what it says, he had a bunch of small children, and who's going to take care of the children? Need to marry.
Doesn't an almana have to wait for Shalosh
Yeah, he has to wait Shalosh Agon. That's a separate. That's not an Issa. That's also. Yeah, he's right, but that shouldn't get that. But that again, but that doesn't apply with the small children. That the Gemara says. Then there's with the small children. You need someone to take care of the children. Didn't have it, you know. Okay, that's one halacha. So what happens but if a lady in the zana, you know, then you don't have to wait 3 months. Because Chazal says she makes sure not to become pregnant. Let's say she was mazana, not with her chassan, someone else.
So that's how they get divorced, not she get remarried right away?
Yeah, that was, the guy wants to marry this lady. But she knows, that she had an affair with someone, not with the chassan. Does she have to wait now 3 months from there?
Or if a person,
She was raped?
she's an Isha Siddiq.
Yeah, but rape, we say that Rabbi is Suchach Abal. We say that those days they couldn't check the DNA testing. So they would say Rabbi is. But here, let's say, she knows, the Mother talks about Shekeh. She knows that she was Mazana. Now she met this guy, they're getting married 1, 2, 3. So the question is now, do you need also 90 days now from the last nus? The Gemara says, the nus, we don't need that, but the one opinion holds, because she makes sure not to become pregnant. No one's still. So it's lo shchir, it's not a common thing. Divorce, misa is common, but such a thing is not so common. Those days, nowadays, but less.
So
Less.
if there's a situation, whatever it is, they get married in 30 days, or there's rape, and we could DNA test today, so we could do that?
Well, we're not allowed to get married, get chil on that, because I made a plea. But if you got married, they didn't ask questions, yes, of course, if you could check the DNA, check the DNA.
And the DNA would give us a result whether the child's mom's or not?
Oh yeah.
And that's it, we say.
This was a famous story in Etzisor. They showed from the father said, "This is not my child." The whole story, and they kept it on the wraps, but I remember the story about 10 years ago. And the child wasn't his child. Today the DNA is incredibly accurate. All right, you know that, and it's incredibly accurate. I'm a twin. They used to think that twins have the same DNA. Now they know that it's not. Even twins have the different DNA. It's it's getting better and better. I mean, the chances are, it's incredible. Have the same DNA as one chance out of 1 billion. I forgot the number.
I had a case with 1 in 400 quintillion.
Okay.
That's 20 zeros.
Yeah. It's today. It's getting.
Statistically possible, right? It's not.
So it's getting. Chances are the same as a nil.
People believe that the world made itself. They believe that it can be.
Even that, I looked at the statistic of what the universe, human beings on the universe would have been. It was 45,000 universes up until this point in order to hit that number. So.
There was also a famous question. I don't remember if I said it over here. I think I said it somewhere. Why you have to have a Elchonon? That is a deraisa, is a derabanan. To know who the father is. The deraisa or the derabanan. There's a Tosis Hilchonon in Yuma, and there's a Tosis Masechtas Megillah. Tosis Masechtas Megillah says a very interesting thing. That's the Achashverosh and Mordechai. So Tosis. But I said it over here, this Tosis. I said it over. So Tosis is a very interesting Tosis. The Gemara says that Esther lived with Achashverosh. She got out of the lap of Achashverosh and got into the lap of Mordechai. I mean, there were intimacy. That's what it means. So Tosis says the kasha. How could he be together with her? You have to have Avchana. You have to know the kid whose child it is. That's Tosis kasha. So Tosis says it's a mishamash b'moch with the diaphragm. So it doesn't say Tosis who. So that the older Achronim, the Gedoyle Achronim learn, of course he was with Mordechai, because what Achashverosh want to have a mach there? I mean, he'll kill her for that. So when you live with, so Tosis held that there's a Chiev Oina, he's obligated to live with Esther, and now there's a problem of Havchana. Havchana means to know whose child it is, so there's a heter to be shamish b'mach to avoid the problem of a chana. You understand what Tosis says? Again, it's with the Rabbanim still, but Tosis Shiurim says it's the Rabbanim still. That's the Chiddush. All the Poskim say it's the Rabbanim. You understand what I just said? Again, Esther lived with two men. Now the question is, how could she live with Mordechai? Because if she becomes pregnant, we're not going to know who the father is. That's enough chana. You're not allowed to.
What's the remedy of
Chana means that you have to wait 90 days. If someone gets divorced, you have to wait 90 days to make sure.
Mordechai was after Esther.
Whatever it was, she was intimate with Esther, and Achashverosh was intimate with Esther.
You're saying that means Mordechai used the mom.
So Tosis says
But if he's after his wife, just not abstain.
that's another kasha. Why was he living with her? So the answer is, let's start why he lived with her. He has a chiyuv to live with her. He has an obligation. It's his wife.
About Dean and Shimon, too. They're the same kasha.
And then I got married, that's something else.
No. Well, it's his wife. He's obligated, and she wants to be intimate with him. So he has an obligation, but he has a problem to be intimate with her because of Avchana. So you see that having to avoid the problem of Avchana, there's a head to the mishamish b'moch. That's what the Moshe brings that thing that whenever there's a big tzorech, you're allowed to use a diaphragm. You're not allowed to use a diaphragm stamazoi. For women, that's but only if there's a huge tzorech. Often there are women who cannot take the pill, who suffer terribly though, and then have other reasons. They can't become pregnant. There's a big valid reason. Diaphragm. Right. Only with let's say I have a lady who she suffers from mood swings. And the doctor told her that she tried the pill and it was just horrible. It makes them sick. And the doctor says she cannot become pregnant. She is emotionally not well yet to become pregnant. She could go. Postpartum could be very dangerous for her. So the only thing she could use is IUD did not work for her. She uses a mach. That's a big case. I mean, you have to ask a rabbi. Don't Moch is a diaphragm. But I could put him. There's no head.
So what's this? Do we say the same thing by a situation if a woman is raped? Why wouldn't you say use a diaphragm or a stain?
No, because there was years before, years after. I mean, you don't know who she the child was. Those days they had no idea. Tosis Taka says if the Gemara says if there was that the Rishonim Poskim say, let's say he knows he wasn't with his wife before that for 90 days. Wasn't known. She was raped. Then he can't live with her. You have to make sure that's what somebody. Yeah, some place. Tina did not marry Shimon.
No, I'm saying he was raped.
She was raped. Dina did not marry. I know the belt says that. The Rashi says, but he couldn't marry his sister. A Benoich is not allowed to marry a sister from the same mother. There's one mother. Dina had the same mother as Shimon.
So would you accept conclusively that's not from Shtem? That Joseph's wife was from Shtem?
Yeah,
that she was. She became pregnant from Shtem. Yeah. And she became pregnant, and she had a daughter from him. And Shimon took her in because those days, if the lady was raped, no one would more marry her. This was it. According to Woman Dumar, Dina got married to Eve afterwards. Eve lost Dina was wife of her.
I saw in the end of there, it speaks about how when he was away for many years, so she called him Molasavai. So he said there, you don't have to force her to live with him, even though that you can't force him.
It's not called a Maredes.
But she can say, I don't want to live
Yeah,
with him.
we don't call her Maredes.
So if a woman says, I don't like my husband,
No. A lady says,
not I don't like, she has a good reason.
so Lady says, here we have a very good reason to believe that, let me explain for the audience what you're asking. There's this famous story that I always call the Noidi Vida. There's times in Noidi Vida, there was a guy who lived in one town, disappeared, and then 12 years, imagine, disappears, gets married to another lady, and they tracked him down, and the Rav of the town forced him to give a get, and he came back to over here, and now he wants to marry her.
Stay married.
Stay married then. She says, huh? So you know what the people in town wanted to do? Beat the dead outside of him. It's clear, before we do it, we'll ask the good ladar. That's clear. You see in the shoyah. So the Nadi says there's no way you're allowed to hit him to force again. But he agrees that she's not a Moredes if she doesn't want to get back with him.
What would the status be?
Nothing. She doesn't. Nothing. Yeah.
He's Mechayim Mizonis to her meanwhile?
No, she's a Moredes. We can't call her Moredes. No.
You can't force him to give a get, but they don't have to live
But
together.
she's not a Moredes.
Dennis, he owes 12 years in the thing.
He owns 12 years of
Living in
Mazonis.
their own homes.
He owns 12 years of Mazonis. He's right. He owes her 12 years. He disappeared 12 years. Who supported her? You think people gave him money? He owes her 12 years of Mazonis.
So he'll owe her, but for
I don't know, I have
while
to-
she says Mo'asavai not to live with you, he won't be Mechayim.
No, won't be chayiv, right. Won't be chayiv.
So what's the point of keeping him in this situation?
That's okay. He
You
didn't
have
want to
no
give a
other
get.
option.
He doesn't want to give a get.
Right, you have no
See,
choice.
this is what I was talking about, the whole story of the get. People think that, these people force gets. You say, hey, have you a case? He was obviously a terrible person, what he did. A horrible person. It's clear from the Rebbe, he didn't believe him that he didn't, he said he heard his wife died. He says, other yeah, other not. You saw the Rebbe. He didn't believe him that. But, but the bottom line is, he can't force a get.
So women can, if they have a Takadu claim, they can have the base thing can basically say,
Okay,
"Yeah,
says,
you know, I love you."
yeah.
Or have your own.
You're not a Meredis.
No, no.
That's the
Doesn't
question.
lose her ksuba anymore.
Doesn't know the ksuba. She's not called a Meredis. The Chavah says if you do get married, if you're kohen, by kohen is making not to get divorced
Once they marry.
once they're married.
You can't remarry.
Can remarry. Okay.